The last light of November 28, 2012, seeped into the mist curling over Victoria's inner harbour. The Pacific air hung heavy, thick with salt and rain, pressing against the old stones and narrow streets like a ghostly hand. Christmas lights blinked weakly through the fog, barely piercing the deepening gloom. For most, it was just another nightfall. But for one young woman, something darker stirred behind the ordinary. Corners seemed sharper, shadows longer, and the city, so familiar, suddenly turned strange. The night deepened, streetlights buzzed to life. The city turned inward, homes and shops closing their doors against the damp cold. Emma, however, kept moving, and just beyond the next corner, unseen, unavoidable, something waited for her. Emma Fillipoff moved through the mist, her figure slight, barely more than a wisp against the wet concrete and dripping eaves. Layers of clothing clung to her damp frame, jackets, scarves, but she carried her shoes in her hands, barefoot against the chill. She drifted between the low glow of shop windows and the black mouths of alleyways, glancing over her shoulder again and again, as if expecting the night itself to reach out and seize her. There was no destination in her steps, only a silent urgency, a flight from something unseen. Hours earlier, Emma had visited a 7-Eleven on Government Street. Surveillance footage captured her movements, entering and exiting again and again, as if caught in some invisible current. Inside, she lingered at the counter, bought a $200 prepaid credit card. Later, she returned and purchased a prepaid cell phone, but never activated it. Each time she crossed the store's threshold, her eyes darted to the darkness outside. Witnesses remembered how she hesitated, standing near the door, reluctant to step out, as if she knew that beyond the glass, something was waiting for her. Around the same time, Emma's mother, Shelley, boarded a flight from Ontario. The decision hadn't come easily. Emma's calls in the days before had been a tangle of desperation and denial. One moment begging to come home, the next insisting all was well. Shelley, listening to the cracks in her daughter's voice, had finally trusted her instincts. Something was terribly wrong, but she would arrive too late. By early evening, Emma was spotted near the waterfront, moving alone through the damp streets. She made brief, disconnected calls from a payphone outside the Empress Hotel, calls that police would later say left no recoverable record. No one knows who she tried to reach. It was here that a passerby, alarmed by her disoriented appearance, called 911. 2 Victoria police officers arrived. They found Emma standing beneath the ornate arches of the Empress Hotel, barefoot on the cold stone. She spoke little, answering their questions with soft, halting replies. She wasn't drunk, she wasn't violent, just scared. They talked with her for 45 minutes, trying to find a reason to intervene. But in the end, they had none. Emma insisted she was fine. She picked up her shoes. She turned away from the officers. And she disappeared into the fog. No one has ever seen her again. And what came next would unravel into one of the strangest mysteries Canada has ever known. By dawn, the mist had lifted, but Emma Fillipoff had not returned. Victoria woke as it always did, ferries cutting across the harbour, seagulls calling from the piers, but for one family, the world had shifted. Shelley Fillipoff touched down at the airport and rushed into the city, certain she would find Emma. Instead, she found only absence. At the Sandy Merriman house, the shelter where Emma sometimes stayed, the staff greeted her with worried faces. Emma had never come back, and the night had already swallowed her. By noon, the police formally declared Emma a missing person. The search began immediately, but Victoria, despite its cozy facade, holds secrets in its corners. Old alleys, crumbling stairwells, hidden pockets where someone could simply vanish. Near the Empress Hotel, investigators fanned out. Tracking dogs caught Emma's scent, but only for a block or two before it disappeared entirely, as if she had been lifted from the streets. No coat, no shoes, no purse, nothing. Her van, a battered red Mazda MPV, was soon located in the Chateau Victoria parking garage. Inside, officers found a collection of her life, sealed away, her passport, her laptop, clothing folded neatly, a trove of handwritten poems, library books recently borrowed but never returned. An almost unsettling tidiness, as if she had been preparing for a journey, but one that did not involve coming back. One item was conspicuously missing, her orange purse, the one she carried that final night, and with it, her prepaid cell phone and Visa card. In the days that followed, Emma's face began to haunt the city. Posters plastered telephone poles and bus shelters, bearing her wide, searching eyes. But the city, wrapped in rain and indifference, seemed unwilling to give her back. And then, whispers began. Someone claimed to have seen her near the ferry terminal in the early morning hours, barefoot, disoriented, wandering along the docks. Another swore she was sitting silently on a bench in Beacon Hill Park, staring out over the misty waters. But none of the sightings led anywhere. The deeper investigators dug, the stranger the trail became. 1 week after Emma's disappearance, a clue surfaced, tantalizing and sinister. Emma's $200 prepaid Visa card, purchased on the morning she vanished, was allegedly used at a gas station outside the city. The man who used it claimed he had found the card discarded near a recreation center. Police questioned him, probed his story, and in the end, they cleared him. A dead end. But the question lingered like a thorn. How had Emma's belongings traveled miles from where she was last seen? Had she made it that far on her own, barefoot, alone, terrified? Or had someone, or something, carried her there? As the days dragged into weeks, Victoria seemed to settle back into its rhythms. But beneath the surface, a shadow remained. Every day that passed only deepened the strangeness. Time crawled forward, but for Emma's family, and for the few who truly listened to the city's silences, the clock had stopped on November 28th. Shelley Fillipoff refused to leave Victoria. She lived out of borrowed rooms, spent her days taping missing posters to the wet lampposts and shelter walls, her daughter's face staring back at strangers who walked past without seeing. Each morning, she retraced Emma's last steps. And then, something happened that broke through the numbness. One afternoon, a witness reported seeing a man not just ignoring Emma's posters, but ripping them down. When confronted, the man didn't deny it. He smiled, almost casually, and said, "She's not missing. She's my girlfriend. She's just hiding." Then he crumpled the poster in his fist and disappeared into the busy streets before anyone could stop him. A composite sketch was created. Posters went up. The man, dubbed the Green Shirt Man, was never identified. Was he delusional? Or was he telling a twisted piece of a truth no one else had yet uncovered? The rumors multiplied. Some whispered Emma had chosen to disappear, folding herself into the hidden cracks of the city's forgotten places, the shelters, the alleyways, the shadows. Others spoke of something darker, that Emma hadn't vanished alone, that someone had been waiting that night, watching her steps, her fear, her growing isolation. And when the time was right, they moved. In May 2014, another clue surfaced, as bizarre as any before. In the Gastown district of Vancouver, hundreds of kilometers from where Emma vanished, a man entered a small clothing store. He paced anxiously. Clutched in his hand was a worn photograph, Emma's missing poster. He asked the cashier if they had seen her. When questioned, he grew defensive, panicked, and fled, leaving the photo behind. Security cameras captured his image. Again, he was never found. Even the sightings grew stranger. Staff at Victoria General Hospital reported that days after her disappearance, a young woman matching Emma's description appeared barefoot in the emergency room. She refused to give her name. She stayed only moments before vanishing back into the night. Security footage was reviewed. Nothing. Logbooks were checked. Nothing. It was as if the hospital itself had imagined her. Emma Fillipoff was everywhere and nowhere. The years stretched on, but the unease never faded. Shelley continued to search, driven by a mother's instinct that her daughter was still alive, somewhere out there, trapped not by death, but by fear. Or something worse. By the 5th anniversary of Emma's disappearance, the case had become a wound that refused to heal. Sightings still trickled in. A woman riding a bus, a figure disappearing into the trees, a voice heard crying on the waterfront. Each lead evaporated as quickly as it came. A young woman, barefoot and afraid. A final glance over her shoulder. And then, nothing. She had vanished without a trace. When people speak of Emma Fillipoff's disappearance, they often say it feels like something out of a movie. Surreal, fragmented, too strange to be real. But Emma's story isn't the only one that makes the hairs on your neck stand up. Just a few months later, in February 2013, another young Canadian woman would vanish under circumstances so hauntingly alike, it was as if Emma's case had cast a shadow across the continent. Elisa Lam, 21 years old, left her home in Vancouver to travel through California. She was bright, introspective, and kind. A journal writer and a reader too, much like Emma. And like Emma, something shifted during her journey. Elisa checked into the historic Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, a building long associated with tragedy. She was last seen by hotel staff on January 31st. Then, silence. Days passed. Elisa's family reported her missing. Her room was untouched. Her luggage remained. No violence, no witnesses. Just another girl, gone. But it was the elevator footage that captured the world's attention. A security camera inside the hotel elevator showed Elisa in the final moments before she disappeared. She stepped in, pressed multiple buttons, peered anxiously into the hallway, stepped out, and then back in, moving as if hiding from something no one else could see. Her body language was chaotic, fearful, confused, at times almost playful, like a person caught in a private nightmare. And then, she was gone. For 19 days, no one knew where Elisa Lam had gone, until the water complaints started. Hotel guests reported foul taste and low pressure. Maintenance workers climbed to the rooftop and opened a sealed, elevated water tank. Inside, floating silently, was Elisa. How she got there has never been fully explained. The rooftop was locked, the tanks were heavy. No one saw her climb. No alarms were triggered, no signs of a struggle, not a single camera captured her ascent. It didn't add up. Even in death, the mystery stayed intact. Emma and Elisa, two young Canadian women, both artists, both intelligent, both solitary, both captured on camera, appearing frightened, paranoid, as though running from something invisible. Both tied to a hotel, both disappeared, just months apart. While Elisa's body was eventually recovered under bizarre circumstances, Emma is still missing to this day. As the fog settled over Victoria, the search for answers began. What happened to Emma Fillipoff? And how did a barefoot young woman vanish in the heart of a city without a single scream, without a single witness, without a single clue that led anywhere at all? Investigators, family members, and the public were left to sift through the fragments, each one more unsettling than the last. Theory 1. A mind at war with itself. Some believe Emma's final days point to a tragic internal battle. Signs of it linger everywhere, her growing paranoia at the Sandy Merriman house, the terrified glances over her shoulder, the desperate but disjointed calls to her mother, begging for help, then pushing it away. Staff at the shelter recalled Emma's fears that someone or something was after her. She packed and repacked her van, clutched a prepaid phone she never activated, bought a ticket she never used. And then, most telling of all, she stripped off her shoes and walked barefoot into the cold. Had Emma been running from a threat that only she could see? Or was she simply trying to flee a world that had grown unbearable? If mental illness had overtaken her, a sudden psychotic break or a deep spiraling fear, it could explain the fear, the flight, the confusion. But it does not explain the silence that followed. No body was found, no personal items, not even a footprint on the muddy banks of the inner harbour. If Emma had collapsed in the wilderness or the cold, the city would have given her back. It never did. Theory 2. A predator in the mist. Others believe the threat Emma feared wasn't a hallucination. Her behaviour that night, the repeated scanning of the streets, the reluctance to leave the safety of public spaces, suggests a woman who believed she was being hunted. And then, days later, a man is seen tearing down her missing posters, smiling as he claimed, "She's not missing, she's hiding. She's my girlfriend." His image, caught forever on grainy security footage, was never matched to a name. If Emma had been targeted by someone who knew her routines, her fears, it would explain the fear the cameras captured. It would explain why her prepaid phone was never activated. Perhaps she never had time. Victoria's inner harbour is bordered by ferries, highways, darkened alleys, a perfect place for a careful predator to vanish without a trace, carrying a barefoot girl into the night. The scent trail ending abruptly, the sightings that never solidified, pieces of a crime missing their culprit. Theory 3, a chosen disappearance. Then there is the possibility that Emma did exactly what she seemed to fear. She disappeared, but by her own hand. Emma had always lived on the fringes, by choice. Shelters, libraries, parks, always a little apart from the world around her. In the weeks before she vanished, she seemed torn. A longing to come home, colliding with a terror of facing the life she had left behind. Could she have planned her own vanishing? Could she have shed her old life the way she shed her shoes, walking into the mist to become someone new? There were no signs of ferry or bus tickets purchased. Her passport, money and laptop were left behind. But Emma knew how to live lightly, how to survive in the margins. Sightings trickled in. A woman riding a bus in Vancouver. A barefoot figure wandering back streets at dawn. A voice crying out near the waterfront. None were confirmed. None ruled out. If Emma disappeared by choice, she remains a ghost walking in plain sight, unseen, unheard, unfound. Theory 4. Stranger shadows. Some refuse the tidy explanations altogether. Victoria's ports, its dark corners, its easy routes to the ferries and forests and oceans beyond, whisper possibilities darker than the simple explanations. Trafficking, abduction, something organized, swift, and merciless. Emma's prepaid card abandoned on a lonely roadside, her van left neatly packed, as if time had frozen. The strange man in Gastown, clutching her photo, searching, sweating, then vanishing before police could arrive. Each piece hints at hands moving behind the curtain in places where cameras do not reach. The city kept its secret. Investigations drifted, but no matter how many questions were asked, the mist always gave the same answer. Nothing. Nothing but a silence that still stretches across Victoria's waterfront, over a payphone that no longer rings, and past a hotel doorway where a young woman stood barefoot once, looking for something, or someone, that would never come. Emma Fillipoff, gone without a trace, and somewhere, just beyond, still waiting, to be found.